What if the bones of a dead civilization could still destroy us? Beneath Europa's ice, an alien starship has awakened, its ancient engines tugging at Jupiter's moons, threatening a chain reaction that could shatter the solar system. Inside its frozen hull lies more than wreckage. It carries memory, knowledge powerful enough to rewrite orbits, or to erase humanity in the same way it erased its makers. The question is not only whether we can stop it, it's whether we dare to learn from it, or if remembering too much will doom us to the same fate. Would you choose to inherit their mistakes, or bury them forever? Join us as we descend into the ice and face the legacy of the forgotten. Section 1. Beneath the ice. Europa's ice was not meant to sing. Yet for weeks the seismic arrays buried under its shifting crust had carried a resonance no geologist could explain, a rhythm that traveled deeper than tectonics, older than tides. When the signal aligned with faint anomalies in Jupiter's magnetic field, the answer became inescapable. Something buried under Europa was awake. The Eidolon arrived on orbit with its escort, the defense cruiser Atlas. The two ships cut stark profiles against the pale curve of the moon below. One a sleek spear of laboratories and sensor banks, the other a fortress plated in ablative armor, its turrets swiveling like wary eyes. Where Eidolon carried scientists, dreamers, and engineers, Atlas carried soldiers who measured survival in probabilities and plasma yields. The pairing was deliberate, discovery and destruction in the same orbit, bound by necessity. Captain Mira Solari stood on Eidolon's bridge as the first survey probes pierced Europa's crust. Columns of steam vented into the black, glittering briefly like glass before freezing. Beneath kilometers of ice, the probes lit caverns with ghostly illumination. Cameras transmitted jagged walls laced with mineral veins, frozen oceans that had never seen a star. And there, caught in the crystalline embrace, was the shape. It spanned nearly 2 kilometers in length, skeletal but intact. A ship, alien, its hull pale as bone, etched with ridges that resembled ribs fused together. Its bow flared like a harp turned sideways, lines curved in graceful arcs that converged on a central core. Fossilized crew lay scattered within the wreck, brittle frames locked in final postures. Yet their vessel's heart still pulsed with energy, each beat slow, deliberate, almost mournful. God, whispered Dr. Alarin Kosi, lead xenoarchaeologist. She leaned over the hollow tank, hands trembling as the scans formed three-dimensional outlines. It's a starship entombed in ice, preserved so completely the databanks might still hold. Admiral Jaron Holt of Atlas did not share the awe. His voice cut through the hush with the weight of steel. It's not dead enough. That power signature is rising. He was right. The pulses from the alien core grew stronger as if sensing attention. Harmonics bled through Europa's crust into orbit, tugging faintly at Eidolon's hull. Instruments screamed of micro-shifts in Europa's orbital path. IO sensors responded in kind. 2 moons, locked in fragile resonance for eons, now drifted toward disruption. Mira kept her gaze steady. The alien wreck was not a grave. It was a fuse, and humanity had just brushed the match. Record everything, she ordered quietly. But prepare containment procedures. Whatever this ship remembers, it may not want to stay forgotten. Please do press that like button if you have enjoyed this story so far. That would mean a lot to me. Now back to the story. Section 2. Fractures in orbit. The first council between Eidolon and Atlas should have been routine. Survey results shared, priorities aligned, strategy set. Instead, it cracked open the tension that had always simmered between exploration and defense. Captain Mira Solari stood in the central conference module, its curved windows framing Europa's pale horizon. The planet glowed faintly with reflected light from Jupiter, the gas giant looming vast and golden. Against that view, Admiral Jaren Holt's armored figure looked like a shadow carved from iron. He leaned over the table projection, jaw locked, eyes narrowing at the pulsing schematic of the alien ship. "It's not a discovery," Holt said flatly. "It's a hazard. We sterilize it before it destabilizes the moons further. My cruiser carries warheads designed to crack asteroids. I can end this within the hour. You destroy a starship preserved for millions of years." Dr. Ilera Nkosi's voice trembled, but not from fear. Her hands hovered protectively over the hologram, like she could shield it. Its databanks could contain an entire civilization's history. Warnings, lessons, knowledge we'll never find again if you burn it. "Knowledge is irrelevant if Jupiter eats 2 of its moons," Holt snapped back. "Every second we debate, Europa slips further. Do you want to record history, Doctor, or survive to read it?" Mira let the silence stretch, forcing both sides to breathe. Her own thoughts churned. Holt wasn't wrong. The orbital models had already flagged drift patterns leading to catastrophe if the pulses continued. But Ilera was right too. Humanity had fought wars over scraps of lost knowledge. Here was a library older than humanity itself. "We proceed with discipline," Mira said at last, her voice even. "We establish a base at the excavation site. Secure access to the databanks. Study the energy core. Admiral Holt, your cruiser stands ready as fail-safe, but we do not erase the past until we understand what it's trying to tell us." Holt's glare could have cut steel. "If your curiosity risks my fleet, I will not hesitate to act." Later, back on Eidolon's bridge, Mira watched the first descent modules launch toward Europa. They fell like sparks into the darkness, their engines flaring against the ice. Within hours, scaffold would burrow into the crust, tunneling down to the alien wreck. But even before they touched down, the pulses grew louder. Instruments shook with each resonance, a thrum that reached into the bones of every crew member. Ilera whispered from her console, eyes wide with awe and dread. "It's responding, not to us, to memory, as if it knows we're listening." Mira clasped her hands behind her back, jaw tight. The Bones of Orpheus were not silent, and they had begun to sing again. If you have enjoyed this story so far, then please do subscribe and hit the bell icon to listen to more stories like this one. Let's get back to the story now. Section 3. The Song of Orpheus. The excavation shaft widened day by day, a scar cut into Europa's endless night. Autonomous drills carved smooth channels through layers of brittle ice, their cutters glowing cherry red against the frozen walls. By the time the descent platforms touched alien hull, the ice itself seemed to thrum with pressure. Engineers swore their tools vibrated in rhythm with it, a pulse that was not mechanical but musical. Mira descended with the first team, magnetic boots locking to each rung of the scaffold. Her visor's heads-up display tracked pressure, radiation, and structural loadouts, but her gaze stayed fixed on the shape emerging from the ice. It wasn't a wreck, not in any human sense. The alien vessel was smooth, like a bone polished by centuries of water. Its surface bore no seams, only grooves that shimmered faintly when touched by light. Dr. Ilera Nkosi moved ahead of the group, fingers brushing the hull with something close to reverence. "It's not a ship," she whispered. "It's an archive. The grooves are phonetics. This entire vessel is a record. Archives don't destabilize moons." Admiral Holt's voice growled from the comm, relayed down the shaft from his command deck above. "Get me answers or get clear." Ilera ignored him, kneeling beside a fracture in the hull where the ice had pried open a seam. Inside, faint light flickered like embers. Mira crouched beside her, peering through. Beyond the breach stretched chambers stacked in layers, each one lined with crystalline ribs. Within those ribs lay still forms, alien bodies curled as if in sleep, their elongated skulls haloed by translucent bone. Fossils, preserved in the cold like statues of ivory. The silence pressed against them until the pulse returned, not sound, not vibration. A resonance carried through the hull, thrumming into their suits. For an instant, Mira swore she understood it. An interval, a question, a half-remembered phrase. The thought dissolved before she could catch it. "Alara," she said carefully, "did you hear that?" The scientist's face was pale in her visor, eyes shining with terror and awe. "Not heard," she corrected. "Felt. That was a memory. They're not sending us signals. They're broadcasting what they once were." On the Eidolon, Aya's console lit up with waves of interference. The ship's processors strained, translating raw radiation into visual form. Across the hollow tank, images bloomed, cities under sapphire skies, bridges of light spanning oceans, towers spiraling into atmosphere. Then fire, fractures across the planet's crust, moons torn from orbit, a collapse of order and song. The crew stared, breathless. They were not watching aliens. They were watching the death of a civilization unfold as if it were happening again. Mira steadied herself against the scaffold, eyes locked on the glowing fracture. "They destroyed themselves," she said softly, "and they left the warning in their bones." Above, Holt's voice was ice. "A warning doesn't stop moons from colliding. Find a way to silence it, Captain, before their fate becomes ours." Section 4. Fault Lines. The first arguments broke out before the excavation scaffolds were even sealed against the cold. Officially, the flotilla shared one mission: secure the alien vessel, decode its systems, stabilize Europa's orbit. But unofficially, each faction had already staked its claim. On Eidolon's command deck, Mira listened to the bickering unfold across secure channels. Terran delegates demanded immediate access to the databanks, citing Earth's fragile climate as justification. Martian envoys countered that their colonies carried the heaviest industrial burden and thus deserved priority. Lunar voices, sharp as glass, cut through both sides. "Without our gravitic dampers, none of you would be alive under Europa's tidal stresses. If the Orphean technology can alter orbits, only Luna has the precision to wield it without catastrophe." Admiral Holt said nothing during the squabble. He simply stood with arms folded, gaze locked on the projection of Europa and its slipping trajectory. His silence was more unnerving than shouting. The memories hadn't helped. The alien broadcasts continued, bleeding into ship systems no matter how hard Aya tried to filter them. Crew across the flotilla whispered of dreams not their own. Towers of crystal crumbling into dust, voices chanting in languages they did not know but understood. Some woke weeping. Others woke with their fists clenched in rage. In the debates that followed, each faction seemed to see in the Orphean collapse a reflection of their rivals. In private, Mira confronted Holt. "Your crews are fraying, Admiral. If this continues, discipline will collapse." His jaw tightened. "Then we burn the source. Wipe the archives before they infect us any further. And lose what could save Europa." Mira shot back. "Those pulses aren't accidents. They're tethered to the orbital drift. If we erase the system before understanding it, we may doom the moons faster." Holt's reply was a whisper like steel scraping stone. "You're gambling with billions of lives for the sake of a tomb." The confrontation ended without resolution. Yet Mira carried his words with her as she returned to the excavation site. Inside the alien ship, Alara had made progress. Her team had accessed one of the crystalline cores. The interface wasn't mechanical, but mnemonic, touch-sensitive surfaces that responded to neural patterns. A technician pressed his palm against the ribbed crystal and staggered back, eyes wide. "It spoke," he gasped, "not in words, in choices, paths, as if it wanted me to decide which memory mattered." Alara leaned over the console, recording every pulse. "They built archives you have to feel, not read," she murmured. "Every user becomes part of the record." When Mira arrived, Alara's face was pale but determined. Captain, the system isn't failing by accident. It's recreating what killed them. A repeating collapse. Unless we rewrite its rhythm, Europa's orbit will keep slipping until collision is inevitable. Mira studied the glowing ribs, the faint figures of alien crew frozen in eternal rest. Not a tomb, not a library. A warning device built from their own remains. She clenched her fists. Humanity's future depended on learning the right lesson before the wrong one consumed them. Section 5. The Memory War. The first riot started in the messed deck of the Atlas. Not with fists or weapons, but with voices raised so sharply they cut like blades. A Terran engineer accused a Martian pilot of tampering with a comm relay to filter access to the Orphean databanks. The pilot laughed bitterly and replied that Terrans were already stealing fragments, hoarding what they found. Within minutes, the argument spilled across channels, each side feeding suspicion with rumors. By the time Admiral Holt restored order, two crews refused to work shifts together. Mira felt the fracture spreading like ice beneath her feet. On Eidolon, she watched her own officers staring too long at their consoles, distracted by ghost images from the alien archive. Alara admitted she dreamed every night of towers bending the skies. One helmsman swore he remembered the fall of a city he had never seen, his voice trembling as if it had been his family buried under rubble. "They're not memories," Alara explained in the briefing. "They're simulations encoded in neural-compatible patterns. But the effect is identical. Our people are living the Orphean collapse, one fragment at a time. And it is tearing us apart," Holt interrupted. He slammed a fist onto the table, rattling glasses. "This is no archive. It's contagion. Every moment we allow it to spread, we edge closer to the same fate as these corpses in the ice." Alara shot to her feet, anger flaring. It's also the only way to understand how they fell, and how to stop the system from dragging Europa into Jupiter's jaws. If we shut down blindly, we risk unleashing the same disaster on ourselves. The chamber fell into heated silence. Mira watched their faces, Holt carved in stone, Alara alight with fragile conviction, her officers divided. She knew the argument wasn't just about alien ghosts. It was about trust. Each faction believed the others would weaponize the archives if given the chance. Later, Aya approached Mira quietly. "Captain, I've been mapping the pulses. They're structured, like a rhythm waiting for counterpoint. I think if we align our ship's magnetic fields, we can dampen the resonance across the flotilla. It might give people relief from the memories." "Do it," Mira ordered. For one night, silence returned. Crews slept without alien dreams. But at dawn, a different tension coiled through the corridors. Withdrawal. Officers whispered about emptiness, about losing something they needed. One confessed he missed the fire in his blood, the clarity of alien certainty. Holt seized on it immediately. "Addiction," he spat. "Proof this archive is poison." But Mira looked at Alara, who shook her head. "Not poison. Compulsion. They built it to ensure no one ignored the warning, even at the cost of obsession." Mira felt the weight settle on her shoulders. The Orpheans had died repeating their mistakes. Now, humanity risked fracturing before even deciphering them. The memory war wasn't about aliens anymore. It was about whether humanity could hold together long enough to learn from them, or collapse the same way. Section 6. Resonance. Aya's son worked in silence for 36 hours, eyes bloodshot, fingers twitching across her console. Streams of data spiraled across the hollow tank. Orbital trajectories, resonance models, gravitational stress maps. At first it looked like noise, the kind of chaos that came from too many variables feeding into too few stable equations. But Aya had grown up on Lunar, where engineers listened to stress harmonics in metal beams the way poets listen to music. She knew noise could carry rhythm if you learned where to place the rests. On the 37th hour, She called Mira to the analysis bay. The hollow tank filled with a lattice of orbit lines. Europa caught in the grip of Jupiter's pull. At first it looked normal, just the usual ballet of moons. Then Aya overlaid the alien pulses. Thin red lines arced across the model, binding one orbit to another like a harp string pulled too tight. It's not random, Aya said, her voice hoarse but steady. The pulses are harmonic corrections. Every surge drags Europa a fraction closer to Io toward Ganymede back toward Europa. It's a chain reaction. If it continues unchecked, the moons will destabilize and collide. Mira leaned closer, fists tightening. Timetable. Aya hesitated. Months at most before resonance tips. Once critical phase lock occurs, no fleet will have the thrust to counter it. On the secure channel, Holt's voice cut sharp. Then we destroy the source before that phase lock. Detonate the wreck. Shatter every rib of that cursed ship. Alara protested instantly. No, the pulses are tied to memory. They're not just output, they're reaction. The system is repeating its collapse. If we erase the archive without rewriting the rhythm, we could accelerate it. The debate raged, but Myra's mind was fixed on a model. The lattice wasn't just resonance. It was a song, a repeating cycle designed to echo failure endlessly. If humanity wanted to break it, they had to add their own verse. We don't silence it, Mira said finally. We counter it. Aya, can our ship's project a harmonic field strong enough to disrupt the chain? Aya nodded slowly. If we coordinate magnetic sails across the flotilla, yes. But it requires absolute timing. Every vessel must move as one. One misaligned thrust, and the pattern collapses back into chaos. Holt grunted. And you expect Terrans, Martians, and Lunars to suddenly sing in harmony. Mira met his gaze through the calm. If we don't, we'll all burn together in Jupiter's shadow. Hours later, the flotilla unfurled its sails across Europa's orbit. Fields shimmered like auroras, each tuned to Aya's counter-rhythm. The first test was tentative, a soft pulse against the alien song. Instruments flared as resonance wavered, Europa's drift slowing by fractions of a degree. On Atlas, Holt muttered into his mic, grudging respect in his tone. For now, you bought us time. But one slip, Captain Solari, and your harmony becomes our funeral hymn. Mira ignored the barb. For the first time since they'd arrived, humanity had shifted the rhythm. Not victory, but possibility. And possibility was enough to keep the Bones of Orpheus singing another day. Section 7. The Architect's Echo. The counter-rhythm held through 3 full cycles of Europa's orbit, buying precious days. It was enough time for Alara's team to crack deeper into the crystalline databanks. With every hour spent inside the alien hull, the pulses grew sharper, less chaotic. It was as though the wreck had noticed their interference and was adjusting to meet them. On the 7th day, the voices began, not human voices, not exactly. More like chords braided into language. Harmonics that bent thought into meaning without translation. The first burst struck Mira while she was in the excavation shaft. Her helmet filled with resonance, a pressure against bone that became words. You're not first. She froze, boots magnetized to the scaffold. Alara, did you hear? Yes, the scientist whispered over comms, voice unsteady. It spoke not to us, at us. A surviving imprint. The hollow tank aboard Eidolon lit up with symbols, ratios spiraling into patterns that Aya translated into navigational schematics. Across the flotilla, crews reported the same message repeating. We built the song. We broke the song. We bound ourselves to remember. Do not repeat us. Alara trembled as she decoded the cadence. This isn't just a warning. It's a plea. They knew their collapse wasn't final. They feared someone would find their tools and use them again. Holt's response was instant, his voice cutting across the shared channel. Then the answer is clear. Destroy the wreck. Scatter its bones. silence the echo forever. No, Alara cried. That's exactly what they feared, that others would forget. The message only endures because the ship endures. If we erase it, we lose the chance to understand how to stop the collapse permanently. Mira listened to them argue, but her eyes stayed fixed on the alien forms frozen in their crystalline tombs. The Orpheans had not left simple ruins. They had left themselves, encoded as a chorus of memory, forced to relive their mistakes so others would never forget. Aya's fingers flew across her console. Captain, there's more. The pulses are shifting in response to us. They're trying to hand us control, but it's fragmented, like a machine running on dying sparks. If we can align our fleet to their echo, we could redirect the orbital harmonics cleanly. And if we misalign, Hull growled, then Europa doesn't drift. Aya answered grimly. It falls. The decision pressed down like gravity. To seize the echo meant trusting an alien intelligence to guide them. To refuse meant dismantling the archive, and praying brute force could hold Jupiter's wrath at bay. Mira stood at the center of her bridge, every officer watching her. She thought of Alara's fire, Aya's precision, Holt's iron certainty. She thought of the Orpheans, bound forever in a cage of their own making. Prepare the fleet, she said finally. We'll answer the echo, and we'll do it together. The order rippled outward through Terran frigates, Martian lances, lunar cutters. For the first time, they all moved not in competition, but in chorus. The Bones of Orpheus had sung their lament for eons. Now, at last, humanity was ready to sing back. Section 8, Collision Course. The fleet assembled above Europa like pieces of fractured crown. Terran frigates spread wide, sails shimmering with defensive fields. Martian cruisers aligned their lances in disciplined rows, crimson hulls gleaming under Jupiter's gold reflection. Lunar cutters drifted at the periphery, gravitic dampers whispering across distorted space. For the first time, all three factions held formation under a single rhythm. Aya's counterharmonic mapped against the alien echo. But the Orphean archive did not make it easy. The pulses surged without warning, doubling in intensity. Europa trembled beneath, fractures spiderwebbing across the excavation site. Ice cliffs collapsed into the shaft, burying scaffolds and avalanches. Myra's heart clenched as she watched evacuation feeds. Engineers scrambled up ladders, magnetic boots sparking, voices overlapping in prayer and curses. Several never made it. Their vitals winked out on her display, silenced by falling ice. Aya's voice rang across the bridge. It's accelerating. The archive senses were trying to override. It's forcing resonance toward critical phase lock. On Atlas, Holt barked orders, his tone harsh but steady. Martian lance, prépare firing solution. If Solari loses control, we cut the wreck apart before it drags Europa into collision. Alara broke across the comms, fury in her voice. Destroying it won't stop the cascade. You'll just unleash it faster. Better fast than inevitable. Holt shot back. Mira gritted her teeth. Enough. We hold. The synchronization began. Across the flotilla, magnetic sails pulsed in timed bursts, projecting counterfields tuned to Aya's models. At first, the effect was subtle, a wobble in the lattice, a slowing of resonance. Europa's drift hesitated, like a dancer pausing mid-step. Cheers rippled across channels. Then the archive struck back. The pulses fractured into irregular beats, splintering Aya's harmonics. Ships staggered in their orbits, thrown out of sync. A Martian cruiser veered too sharply, its lance firing early. The beam sheared through Europa's upper crust, igniting a geyser of steam and molten rock. The shockwave rippled across the fleet, knocking two Terran frigates into a collision spiral. Both detonated in brilliant silence, debris scattering like embers. Mira slammed her fist into her console. Hold formation, correct, and realign. But chaos spread faster than discipline. Crews cursed and screamed as alien echoes bled into their comms, overlapping orders with ghost voices. Some officers froze, staring into nothing, lips moving with words not their own. Others fought harder, rage and fear giving them strength. Aya's voice cut through the storm. "Captain, listen. The archive isn't trying to kill us. It's forcing us to choose, either fracture apart as they did, or hold through the dissonance. It's a test." Mira seized the moment. She opened the fleet-wide channel, her voice carrying like iron across static. "This is not Terran, Martian, or Lunar. This is human. We stand together or we fall as shadows. Hold the rhythm. Trust each other." One by one, the ship steadied. Martian lances adjusted in sync with lunar dampers. Terran shields layered in harmony. The flotilla swayed like a single organism, battered but unbroken. In the excavation shaft below, the alien chorus shifted. The words returned, harmonics bending into meaning. "You're not first, but you may be last. Sing true and endure." Europa's tremors slowed. For a heartbeat, hope returned. But the orbital models updated instantly. Despite their effort, Io's trajectory had slipped closer. A collision course was no longer hypothetical. It was coming. Section 9, the last lesson. Io's shadow stretched long across Jupiter's face, its orbit tightening with every hour. Models projected impact within weeks. The fleet could dampen the resonance for moments, maybe days, but not long enough. Unless they altered the system entirely, the moons would collide, shattering into a storm of debris that could sterilize the inner system. In the alien archive, Ilera stood at the crystalline core, her gloved hand pressed against its surface. The pulses throbbed beneath her palm, not just rhythms now, but layered chords cascading like a dirge. Tears streaked her face. "It's showing me the end," she whispered into her comm, "not ours. Theirs." The hollow tank above the excavation chamber lit up, projecting the final memories of Orpheus's people. Cities burning as orbital tides tore oceans from their beds. Moons dragged from sky, crashing down in fire. The Orpheans had not died in silence. They had fought to the last, wielding their orbital manipulation engines in desperation. They shifted orbits, redirected moons, turned the sky itself into a weapon. And in doing so, they sealed their fate. Aya translated the incoming ratios, voice flat with disbelief. They built systems to control orbital mechanics with absolute precision. If we activate it, we could pull Io back, stabilize Europa, maybe even strengthen Ganymede's path. Pull cut in instantly, harsh and absolute. Or we repeat their mistake. That technology killed them. You would have us gamble the lives of every human colony on alien math. Ilera spun toward his image on the holoscreen, fury in her eyes. "It's not alien anymore. It's data. Knowledge. We can refine it, correct what they failed to balance. If we destroy it, we condemn ourselves to collision." Mira stood between them, gaze locked on the glowing ribs of the archive. She could feel the choice pressing down, Holt's brutal certainty versus Ilera's burning faith. The Orpheans had died, not because they dared to use their tools, but because they lost unity while wielding them. Their lesson wasn't destruction. It was division. Aya's voice broke in her thoughts. "Captain, I've mapped a possible sequence. If we channel our fleet's sails in harmony with the archive's pulses, we can trigger the orbital engine beneath Europa. But it requires absolute trust. No faction can lag. No captain can doubt. One misstep, and the cascade repeats at full scale." Mira exhaled slowly. Around her, her officers waited, the weight of humanity's future in their eyes. "We're not Orpheans," she said at last. "We carry their warning, but we are not bound to their fate. We will use their bones to live, not to die, and we will do it together." She opened the fleet-wide channel. "Terrans, Martians, Lunars, listen. We have one chance, not as rivals, not as enemies, but as one species. Hold the rhythm, trust the signal, and fight for the sun that made us. Across the flotilla, acknowledgments came in, some defiant, some trembling, but all resolute. Holt's voice was last, bitter but unyielding. Very well, Captain Solari. I'll see this through, but if you falter, I'll burn the wreck myself. The pulses surged, louder than ever. The bones of Orpheus glowed like a living heart. Humanity had chosen its path. The last lesson was not to destroy the past, but to endure it and to rise beyond it. Section 10. Fire in the Ice. The ignition sequence began beneath Europa's crust. The alien archive pulsed like a drumbeat, guiding the flotilla's rhythm. Terran frigates widened their sails. Martian cruisers angled their lances. Lunar cutters bent gravitic fields into counterpoint. Together, they wove their energy into the crystalline heart of the wreck, aligning human will with alien design. At first, nothing happened. Then the ice screamed. Columns of steam erupted miles high, geysers tearing fissures across Europa's surface. The excavation shaft trembled, scaffolds crumpling under the quake. Mira clung to the rail of Eidolon's bridge, teeth gritted as pressure warnings howled. Hold formation, she ordered, voice like iron. Ayes console Lichimson. Core is active. Orbital engine responding. Europa's drift is slowing. Cheers erupted across channels until the backlash came. The archive surged with power far greater than their models predicted. Pulses struck the fleet like tidal waves of gravity. Terran frigates buckled under strain, hulls groaning as magnetic sails warped out of true. One snapped entirely, spiraling into Europa's atmosphere where it burned like a falling star. Correct. Realign, Mira shouted. Alera's voice broke across the channel, frantic. The system resists us. It remembers collapse and fights to repeat it. We must give it new memory, overwrite the rhythm itself. Aya's fingers blurred across controls, eyes wild. She's right. We can't just follow its song. We have to improvise. Controlled dissonance. Variance only humans can sustain. Mira seized the comm. All ships. Break perfect formation. Introduce stagger. Trust instinct. It was madness. Centuries of fleet doctrine demanded precision, uniformity. But now Martian lances fired in ragged spirals. Terran shields pulsed offbeat. Lunar dampers bent harmonics with deliberate imperfection. Chaos filled the void. Human chaos, unpredictable alive. The archive faltered. Its pulses fractured, then bent, reshaping to follow humanity's jagged rhythm. Icequakes eased. Europa's orbit corrected by fractions, just enough to nudge Io's trajectory away from collision. Hope surged, then shattered as the archive screamed. A harmonic shockwave tore through the wreck, detonating buried chambers. Entire caverns of frozen corpses cracked open, alien fossils spilling into the abyss. The pulses spiked uncontrollably, threatening to rip the orbital engine apart. On Atlas, Holt's voice roared. This is the endgame. Detonate warheads. End it before the whole moon tears apart. No, Alera cried, desperation breaking her voice. We're so close. The system is yielding. Give us one more cycle. Mira clenched her fists, every instinct screaming. Around her, crew waited for the order that could doom them all. She stared into the hollow tank, where Europa's orbit flickered between collapse and stability. Humanity balanced on a knife edge. Hold the line, she whispered. Then louder, all ships, one more cycle. We finish this. The fleet obeyed. The bones of Orpheus burned brighter than ever, caught between death and rebirth. Section 11. The Chorus of Humanity. The final cycle began with silence. Not the absence of sound, but the terrible stillness before a storm breaks. Europa's crust glowed faintly from the fractures, steam venting into space like the breath of some buried beast. Above, the flotilla hung in ragged formation, hull scarred, sails torn, crews exhausted beyond measure. Yet every ship held station. Mira stood at the center of Eidolon's bridge, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. This is it. No factions, no rivals. One chorus, one species. Sing true. Across the fleet, acknowledgments rolled in. Holt's growl was grimmer than steel, but resolute. Martian lances ready. Admiral Durell's clipped lunar tones followed. Dampers synchronized. Terran captains responded with quiet determination. Aya triggered the sequence. Harmonics rippled through the sails, lances, and dampers, weaving into the alien pulses. For the first time, the rhythms aligned, not in imitation, but in fusion. Human dissonance and alien resonance meshed into something new, a melody forged from difference, not uniformity. The archive responded. Its crystalline ribs blazed with light, projecting images across the void. The Orpheans' final collapse replayed again, but this time the ending shifted. Where once towers fell, they now held. Where moons collided, their orbits curved apart. The chorus bent memory itself, rewriting the fate of a civilization long gone. Alara gasped, tears on her cheeks. We're giving them a new ending. A chance they never had. Europa trembled as the orbital engine surged. Currents of gravity rippled outward, threads of force latching onto Io, Ganymede, Callisto. Their orbits quivered, threatening chaos, then stabilized, settling into a harmony never recorded before. The cascade was broken, but the strain tore at the fleet. One Martian cruiser's hull ruptured, its crew singing defiant hymns into the comms until their voices were swallowed by static. A Terran frigate's reactor melted down, burning itself to keep its shield online until the last instant. A lunar cutter vanished in a flare of light, its dampers collapsing space around it. Myra's voice carried through the losses. Every ship counts. Every sacrifice is part of the song. Hold until the end. The pulses reached a crescendo. The archive blazed like a star beneath the ice, then fractured, not in destruction, but in release. Crystalline ribs cracked open, releasing frozen corpses into the abyss. Their hollow eyes reflected starlight as if finally freed. The last words came not as sound, but as vibration deep in the bones of every human. You remembered us. You endured. Now live. Then the light faded. The pulses died. Europa stilled, and in the hollow tank, orbital models confirmed stability. Io curved away from collision, its path altered just enough. The moons were safe. The system would endure. Silence followed, heavy and holy. On Atlas, Holt's voice was ragged but alive. It's done. Alara whispered the truth that settled in every heart. We sang them peace, and they gave us survival. Mira closed her eyes, exhaustion washing over her. The chorus had ended, but humanity's song would go on. Section 12. The Bones Remember. The wreckage of the fleet drifted in Europa's shadow, silent monuments to those who had sung until their voices burned out. The orbital engine was quiet now, its ribs dim, no longer thrumming with alien hunger. The catastrophe had been stopped. Jupiter's moons turned serenely, their courses altered but stable, like dancers returning to rhythm after nearly stumbling to ruin. Humanity had endured, but at a cost carved deep into every survivor. Mira stood on Eidolon's observation deck, watching the shimmer of auroras dance across Europa's horizon. Beneath that ice lay the fractured remains of the Orphean archive, its memory scattered yet not entirely lost. What lingered was not raw data, but the echo of civilization's final gift. She felt the weight of it pressing on her, an inheritance too heavy to bear, yet impossible to refuse. Aya's voice broke the silence. We salvaged fragments, equations, star charts, the architecture of their memory engine. enough to accelerate us centuries ahead if we choose. She hesitated, but there are warnings too. Weapons that fold orbits like paper. Algorithms that turn their sky into a cage. Their destruction is encoded alongside their brilliance. Holt's reply was sharp, weary. Seal it then. Better to walk blind than march the same path to ruin. Admiral Durrell countered with quiet steel. No, to bury knowledge is to repeat mistakes in ignorance. We must learn, even if it burns us. The council formed a board Eidolon, voices rising like the arguments that had once divided them. Terran pragmatists, Martian zeal, lunar precision, each demanded a say in humanity's next step. The debates stretched for hours, punctuated by memories of those lost in the chorus. At last Mira spoke, her voice cutting through the storm. The Orpheans destroyed themselves because they chose memory without mercy. They preserved every mistake until it defined them. We will not repeat that. We will remember, but selectively, with judgment. Not every truth deserves survival. Aya met her gaze, understanding. You mean we curate the archive? Carry forward the lessons, not the tools of ruin. Mira nodded. We honor the Orpheans by choosing differently, by refusing to become their shadow. The vote was not unanimous, but it was decisive. The archive would not be sealed, nor unleashed in full. Instead, its fragments would be sifted, its lessons distilled into principles rather than blueprints. Humanity would inherit the wisdom of Orpheus, but not its chains. Later, when the fleet limped home, broadcasts carried the story across Earth, Mars, Luna, and beyond. The names of the fallen were etched into memorials. But so too was a phrase, carried in whispers from those who had felt the final pulse of alien thought. You remembered us. You endured. Now live. In time, poets called Europa a grave, a cathedral, and a cradle all at once. Pilgrims came to orbit, gazing down at the moon, where humanity first proved it could carry not only its own past, but the echoes of another species too. Mira, older and scarred, returned years later. She watched the auroras once more and whispered into silence. We remember, and we choose to live. Far below, buried in ice, the bones of Orpheus slept. Their song was ended, but humanity's had only just begun. Please do press that like button if you have enjoyed this story, and also please do subscribe and hit the bell icon to listen to more stories like this one. That would mean a real lot to me. Now go ahead and listen to your next story here.